Where was I? It's me banging on about Lara Croft and her big boobs. Okay, hey guys, thank you, welcome back. This is Dr. H, and I'm going to be trying to talk to you today about representation in Lara Croft Go. So obviously Lara Croft is a fairly contentious character. She's been around since 1996. She's had a lot of things written about her. Louisa Peacock, writing in The Telegraph in 2013, said that she looked like a ridiculous schoolboy dream sex symbol. Nobody naturally has a waistline that thin with boobs that big. And looking at this image of Lara here, you can kind of see what she's talking about. She also wrote that she's wearing a conveniently skimpy low-cut vest top, which every time she bends down gives viewers an uncanny excuse to look straight down it. And I think she used this exact same image in her article. And again, she's got fair comment there. There is certainly an element of sexualization. There's certainly an element of male gaze and gaze theory here. So to bring Laura Mulvey in on this, for those of you who don't know, Laura Mulvey wrote an essay on visual pleasure and narrative cinema, in which she refers to the idea that when media products are constructed, they are constructed with a male audience in mind, and usually a white male heterosexual audience in mind. The idea is that women are constructed, created, this fictionalized kind of representation of them for straight white men to look at and to kind of perv over, basically. This essay was written in 1975, and whilst it was a perfect commentary on 1975 and the 1970s, and whilst much of it still holds true today, in fact some might argue all of it holds true today, it is quite passé. I mean, this is over 40 years old now, and I think examiners would probably quite like to read something else, or at least something in addition to the sort of the classic Mulvey quotes where she talks about the erotic object for the characters and the erotic object for the audience being one and the same. If you want to get into the gender theory and the representational theory of Lara Croft, there's actually a pretty good essay on the subject if you're a teacher watching this, or if you're looking to study this game at a higher level than GCSE in English or 10th grade in the US. And that's by a professor called Helen Kennedy, and she wrote it in 2002. It's called Lara Croft, Feminist Icon or Cyber Bimbo, and the link is in the comments section below. And it's a pretty good sort of expose of these two different views of her. She has been seen as a feminist icon to some and as a cyber bimbo to others. But I just want to draw your attention to something that a woman called Nikki Douglas wrote, or was quoted on saying by Henry Jenkins in his book From Barbie to Mortal Kombat from 1998. Nikki Douglas, as a female player, praised the game for having a female lead. She said that even if I was performing tasks that were a bit unrealistic, I still felt like, hey, this is a representation of me, as myself, as a woman, in a game. How long have we waited for that? Of course, Nikki Douglas being interviewed in 1998, just a couple of years after the original Tomb Raider, Lara Croft 1996, came out. So there's the idea here that it could potentially be acceptable to have a negative representation of a particular minority group if it's boosting the profile of that group. But, I mean, is that really okay if it's done at any cost? I mean, wouldn't it just be better to, do it well? Anyway, Nikki Douglas is writing at a time where there were lots of kind of fairly powerful female characters starting to come through in the media. You've got Buffy the Vampire Slayer, 96 to 2003. You got Thelma and Louise, which I think is 93. And then you've got Trinity from The Matrix, which was 99, and again through to 2003. And an interesting thing around Trinity as a character, as this kind of powerful yet sexy symbol, is it led to something called the Trinity effect. And the Trinity effect was a way of describing writing a strong, heroic character that you would historically have given to a male and then just making that character female. I mean, arguably, it should really be called the Ripley effect. But that leads to the question that, isn't Lara Croft just Indiana Jones with bigger boobs? Whilst you're kind of cogitating on that one, I'm going to bring in some of the theory that you might want to write about if you're writing about this at GCSE in an exam. So we've got Stuart Hall. We've got Stuart Hall's representational theory of the preferred or dominant reading, the negotiated reading, and the oppositional reading. And I'm going to put 3 frame stops in when I talk about these things, so you can actually beef up on the theory before I start discussing it. So the first frame stop for the preferred is coming up here. Okay, so if we take a preferred reading of Lara Croft, she is supposed to be this feminist icon, as Helen Kennedy says. She is supposed to be this brave, strong, agile, intelligent, dominant female who is able to handle anything that the world throws at her. You know, she's running from dogs, she's shooting down bats. In this game, she's taking out snakes and spiders, and these big kind of salamandery things, these human sort of lizard men. And, you know, all of that stuff is signaled in her costume and her appearance. So she's athletic, she's slim, she's got this kind of, she carries these 2 guns around with her, which she's not afraid to use. She's able to hurl spears at a very long distance. And all of this stuff builds up this preferred image of her as this sort of, this female heroine character that young girls could aspire to be, that's a positive role model for women. Now, we take an oppositional reading, and here's the frame stop. We take an oppositional reading of Lara Croft. We really have to go back and dig into her history, because the image of Lara Croft has changed quite a lot over the years. And you can see here how the body shape has changed. You've got that kind of itty-bitty waist in there again. And you can also see how the kind of the facial structure has changed. So the sort of the square jawline, the quite masculine jawline is gone, and she's become more feminine as, let's face it, as graphics capabilities in-game engines have developed, and it's become easier to more accurately represent women. However, I don't think that's what's been going on with her boob size, and it is Lara Croft's boobs that everyone always talks about, so we really can't get away from this issue. I do think that her shrinking chest over the years is a reaction to some of the criticism that she's come in for from people like, you know, Helen Kennedy and Louise Peacock and various other people. But I also think that it's become a reaction to changing tastes and changing perspectives in a feminist, I'm not going to say post-feminist because we're not in a post-patriarchy, but in a kind of a feminist landscape, that developing these characters for the fanboys is excluding a massive amount of the community that aren't kind of down with the sort of the teenage adolescent fantasy of Lara Croft. So if we're going to take an oppositional reading of her, you know, we're going to talk about the unrealistic body shape. We're going to compare her to Barbie in the way Henry Jenkins might, the way that she's got the kind of the unattainable figure, the way that she suggests that you have to look a certain way if you're a woman and you want to make it in the world. But really, if we try and apply an oppositional reading to Lara Croft Go, we're not left with a massive amount so that we can say that's original to this game. There isn't very much in this game that is building on the negative representations of her before, or really massively that's working against them. I mean, Square Enix here have just kind of gone for the typical representation of Lara Croft. She's not got ridiculously big boobs and a ridiculously thin waist. She's not got small boobs and a wider waist either. They've kind of just gone with the norm here. So really, if we're going to use Stuart Hall and his preferred negotiated oppositional, it will be useful to talk about a negotiated reading. And here's the frame stop. So a negotiated reading is going to give us somewhere in between the two. So we can say, yes, she is presenting a negative representation of femininity. She's suggesting to a generation of young women and girls that you have to look a certain way. But she's also a badass. I mean, she also kicks a lot of ass in these games. She's indestructible, and that's a really important point. She is actually indestructible. I mean, if you die, you get to come back again and again and again. And James Paul G, in his book, What the Video Games Teach Us About Literacy and Learning, has a lot to say about the tremendous learning power of being able to die and come back and try a different path and try again and try again. And it is quite empowering to know that you are basically indestructible in this game. Sure, you can die now, but you're just going to reload the level, and the game only ends when you choose to stop playing or when you complete the game and you win successfully. So these are the different ways we could apply Hall. And if you're aiming for a nice, safe level 5 or grade 6 at GCSE, then you can probably stop right here. You don't really need to go any further. You've got Stuart Hall, got one or two of these other things you can talk about. But what I wanted to do was go a little bit further, because there's another theory that might give you something more to say. And this is not nearly as conclusive. It's not possible to come to a conclusion and say that this is definitely what is going on. But I think it's interesting to just have this debate and raise the question in the first place. So I'm going to talk about Judith Butler and the idea that gender is performative, the idea that gender is a performance, that gender isn't something that you are, gender is something that you do. So, for example, if I want to get up and I want to go out and I want to wear a dress, and anyone who knows what I look like can have that wonderful mental image of that happening right now. If I want to go out and do those things, then at that time, for those moments, I would be performing aspects of femininity. Similarly, if a girl wants to dress in a butch way, she would be performing aspects of masculinity. It doesn't necessarily make me gay or the butch dresser lesbian because they choose to dress in a particular way or to adopt particular stances of masculinity or femininity. What Butler is saying is that anyone can perform masculinity, whether you're male or female, and anyone can perform femininity, whether you're male or female. And then crucially for Butler, what she says is that when we do this, we make these performances against a set of meanings already socially established. We already have to have ideas about what male and female are in order to decode the performances of male and female that we see. So, for example, it would be impossible to understand that skirts are a female thing or associated with femininity if you've only ever grown up around a load of kilt-wearing Scottish people. So in applying Butler here, we really need to think about what does the act of playing Lara Croft mean? So whether you are a guy and you're playing Lara Croft, or whether you're a girl, you're playing Lara Croft, you are still incorporating, Gordon Callejo would say, you're incorporating the body of this sort of 20-something female socialite, archaeologist, explorer. And for the times in which we are playing her, to an extent, we are performing her femininity. And it is a completely inaccessible femininity. Nobody could really do the things she do, whether you're male or female. Nobody could really do the things that she does. So here are some of the questions that I think it would be useful to ask. And you can have these debates on paper, and you really don't have to come to any kind of conclusion at GCSE or 10th grade. As long as you're just raising the question and saying there isn't a simple answer and having the debates, you're hitting the right levels to get those higher grades. So the sort of things you could say is that, if you are a man and you're playing Lara Croft, there is an element of kind of gender bending. There is an element of kind of dressing up and playing with the female, playing with aspects of femininity. And if you're a girl, on the other hand, if you're a female player, you're playing with the idea of inhabiting this superwoman, this super idea of femininity, to take a kind of a negotiated reading here. And yes, that comes along with all the problematic representational stuff of Lara Croft as this kind of cyber bimbo. But at the same time, it's incredibly empowering because you can run and jump and dive and duck and dodge and fire guns and kill live man-sized snakes. And, don't even get me started on the phallic quality of the snake and why they've chosen to put the snake imagery all over this game. But here's the thing that's really worth pointing out. When you play a Lara Croft game, generally speaking, these are single-player games. So it's just you. There's no one else around. There's no one to judge you. There's no one to kind of make fun of you for playing as a female character if you're a guy, or for playing as a cyber bimbo. You would not ordinarily associate yourself with any of the sorts of things that Lara Croft can be seen to stand for. This is a safe space. Computer games are a safe space in which to have these experiences, in which to play with the idea of being a different character. And yes, of course, it is play. It's not real. At the end of the play session, again, going back to what Gordon Callejo says, we bring some of our identity and some of our personality and some of our experiences into the character, and we take away some of the experiences that we've had whilst playing her afterwards, and some of those experiences stay with us. And if they didn't, then we wouldn't want to play the game. So the debates that can be had, if you want to bring in Butler and performance, are why do men choose to play Lara Croft? Is it because they want to experience the idea of femininity, play with some aspects of femininity that in our quite masculine, sometimes quite macho culture, they would be laughed at if they tried to do anywhere else, anywhere outside of a safe space. Is it that women who want to play Lara Croft want to have this experience of playing the superwoman, playing this impossible character that nobody could ever be? Or could we completely cross those two? Do men want to play the superhero character? Do women want to play with aspects of femininity that they would not normally be able to play with? Or is it a combination of all these things? As I said, there are no simple, straightforward answers. Hopefully I've not rambled my way through this video analysis too much, and hopefully I've given you guys something that will be useful for you to write about in your essays. Okay, bye-bye for now. Happy hunting.